In honor of Warhammer 40K Space Marine 2 finally being released on September 9, 2024, I am playing the original Warhammer 40K Space Marine, released September 6, 2011. This video you are now watching is a recap of that playthrough, so sit back, grab your beverage of choice, and enjoy my playthrough and recap of Warhammer 40K Space Marine. It has been over a decade since I have played this game, through and through. The last time I played this game from start to finish, I was in the Navy and the game had just come out. Now recently I did attempt to play it when Space Marine 2 was first announced, but only got to a certain point. Spoiler alert, I will be spoiling the events of Space Marine. If you wish to play the game yourself, turn back now, otherwise, let's keep going. The story begins with an Imperial forged world has been invaded by orcs. And on that forged world is an Imperial Titan, one of the most powerful weapons the Imperial of Man has in the 40K universe. You are Captain Titus of the Ultra Marine, one of the oldest chapters of Space Marines in the 40K lore. Your vanguard squad of Space Marine must take out the orcs and prepare for the landfall of the Liberation Fleet that is en route. As your Thunderhawk makes landfall, it comes under heavy fire from anti-aircraft weapons from the orcs. You are forced to bail out using a jump pack. Your squad consisting of Corporal Leandros and Veteran Sergeant Sidonis. Leandros, unfortunately, he's a prick. I ain't gonna lie, he's a prick. He's very, very nitpick and by the book, and that's gonna play a big factor later in this game. To some extent, he's a Karen. He's a Karen in the 40K universe, and he's just gonna Blue Falcon everybody. Okay, I'm done. We can move on.
Not before having a word or two with the orcs.
Is that wise, Captain? The Codex Astartes does not support this action.
Try to keep up.
At its core, Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine is a hack-and-slash third-person shooter. In order to regain health, you have to complete a finisher. Either you stun them, like you do with little mini-goblins that you can one-shot like they're nothing, but the big guys, you usually have to stun them first, and then you smack them to death, just like that. And then, the yellow bar that goes around your health, picture that like your shield, just like in Halo. Yes, they took some stuff from Halo. Who doesn't take stuff from Halo? They took a shield, overshield, so it's a third-person shooter with some hack-and-slash elements. For the remainder of this review, I will explain the mechanics as we get to them. So playing Space Marine, again, in hindsight, this game can be a little bit repetitive. It is a lot of the same stuff over and over again. You shoot some orcs, you kill some orcs, you move on to the next section. You usually got a blocker of some type. You might have to blow up a barrel or something like that so you can move on. But for the most part, it's moving on in a similar section. Overall, this section, the beginning where you land on the ship and have to find your way through, it's generally a very good, easy, smooth tutorial section. They walk you through each move, each section, how do you do this, how you do that, etc. It ain't bad, and it ain't that great either. Not the world's greatest thing, but not bad either. I still love this game. And you know what? It reminds me of this wonderful thing called Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. You know, remember that scene where they take the ship and then it crashes on Coruscant? Yeah, reminds me just like that, and while you're at it, let's go ahead and strike a pose. So after you crash land on the Forge world, you get a quick radio message from Veteran Sergeant Sidonis telling you where to go next. You maneuver in some ruins, and then after you get out of the ruins, you get to a particular building, and the next mechanic is introduced. Inside that shrine, that blue shrine, is the most iconic weapon of the 40K universe, the Imperial Bolter, the standard rifle for a space marine, firing bolts of holy metal into the enemies of the Empire, the enemies of the Imperial of Man. All jokes aside, the Bolter's a good standard rifle. It does a good amount of damage. It can take down most of the medium orcs, the Gretchens in one shot, and some of the later enemies that'll be introduced later. Once you acquire the Bolter, you progress a little bit farther into the game, and you rendezvous with your first squad mate again. Unfortunately, it's Corporal Corporal Leandros. So shout out to the developers at THQ and Relic back in the day. If their plan was to make you hate Leandros, they succeeded. I will say that they frickin' succeeded, because I do not like him, and you will see very soon why I've called him the Karen of the 40K universe. You will know why I call him that.
Astartes warns against using jump packs to leap blindly into enemy fire, and for good reason.
Your days as a novice are behind you. Why do you still interpret the Codex so narrowly?
I look to its rules for guidance.
We all do. But there are also benefits to thinking for yourself, there is.
After you meet up with Corporal Karen Leandros, your next objective is to rendezvous with Veteran Sergeant Sidonis as you make your way through the trench lines currently under siege by the invading orc mob. Shout out to the developers once again for knowing their lore. Shout out for representing the Astra Militarum, commonly referred to as the Imperial Guard. They're a basic foot soldier of the Imperial Command. They are average humans, usually conscript or volunteers all around the galaxy, all around the Imperial. They're basic ground forces, rather than the artillery, infantry, armor, etc., etc. This is where you first interact with the Imperial Guard. Normally it is common in Warhammer. Dawn of War is the main example that comes to my head. That the Imperial Guard are usually looked at as weak, scared, coward, deserters. Not fit to walk the land, or just cannon fodder, sent into the fields to be shot at. In this game, they are shown to be more favorable, as the Bastion, as the Defenders, the Imperial, like they truly are. In most games, they are treated like cowards, cannon fodder, and that's how they're shown normally. I love the fact that this game showed them in a more, just as Captain Titus said, "We thought you dead." Meaning he expected the Imperial forces to be gone. Everyone expected the Imperial forces to be gone, but the Imperial Guard were holding the line. That is one heck of a representation. I'm an Imperial Guard player in 40K. I love that. I love that my faction, my guys, were given the proper respect they frackin' deserve. The guardsmen sentries that you speak to inform you about their lieutenant that has been leading the Imperial forces since the generals were killed in action. Once you rendezvous with your other squad member, Veteran Sergeant Sidonis, you will then head to the bunker and meet the lieutenant to get an up-to-date information on the artillery gun used by the orcs to repel the Liberation Fleet. Upon reuniting with Veteran Sergeant, you are given the first melee upgrade, the Chain Sword. The Chain Sword is an upgraded melee weapon to your knife. In all honesty, it's not that impressive. You will replace it almost as quickly as you get it. I will also say to anyone who plays this game after watching this report, be careful of the exploding squids. If you are not careful, you can get overwhelmed quickly, and you will be killed. However, use them to your advantage as well. Take them out so that they explode and take out more orcs before they get to you. Interesting tidbit of gaming history. This game came out in 2011 and uses finisher moves to regain health. You know that system is used in Doom Eternal and its sequels? But guess what came first? Space Marine came first. So thanks to Space Marine for inspired mechanics that are used in Doom to this day, which also brings a complete circle because Doom, the original Doom, inspired the playstyle that is used in Warhammer 40K Bolt Gun. Upon your arrival to the bunker, you'll speak to the lieutenant. She gives you an update information on the gun, and then you head towards the gun. Under her escort, she leads you to your next mission. It is at this point you see and find a new shrine that introduces you to the Stalker Bolter, the first weapon with a scope in this game. The Stalker Bolter is pretty good if you can get a headshot. Without a headshot, you can usually take an enemy out within 2 to 3 shots. Headshot will kill most medium-sized orcs in one blow. You will get a better sniper rifle later in the game, one that will turn anything, almost anything, to pink mist. Shortly after getting the Stalker Bolter, you will separate from the lieutenant, and you will enter a section where you use the Stalker Bolter to eliminate enemies. From afar, this shooting section is an introduction to the Stalker Bolter's mechanics. Soon you will see a drop pod in front of you. In that drop pod is the introduction to the next mechanic, and the first time you take control of Captain Titus in a jump pack. Overall, the jump pack mechanics are very easy. You hold one button to jump in the air, and press another button to come down hard and land an AoE attack. On the Xbox controller, that is X, and to land the AoE attack, and A, you hold to jump. And correct me if I'm wrong, chat, I believe that X is to jump, and the square button to perform the AoE attack on a PlayStation. But overall, this section's very fun. Overall, you feel like a beast. The jump pack sections are usually a little bit fast-paced and can get overwhelmingly quick if you don't pay attention to certain enemies and take them out quickly. Specifically, the rocket boys. The orcs with rockets. They are annoying. If you're not careful, they will destroy you. They will do a lot of damage. They will destroy your shield. If you don't take care of them quickly, they will take care of you, and you will have to repeat this section over and over again. There are later moments in this report which will demonstrate exactly what I mean. Another purpose of the jump pack is to outflank, outmaneuver, and take advantage of the high ground when taking out orcs. As we've all learned from Star Wars, the high ground is extremely important. Extremely important. Unfortunately, the jump pack section only lasts for a limited time, up to a certain point. After you get to a certain point, Captain Titus removes the jump pack and you're back on foot. So 2 mechanics that I forgot to mention while editing, that's when I realized I missed them, and I don't feel like redoing the narration, so I'm just going to add them real quick before we go into the gun bunker. Number 1 is Fury mode. You gain Fury by killing enemies and doing finishers, which allows you to activate basically a mode that's similar to Devil Trigger in Devil May Cry, but a little bit more limited and shorter time period. But basically you regain health, you do a lot more damage, and you automatically do finishers against enemies without having to button mash or anything like that. That's Fury mode, at least the first part. The other item that I forgot to mention is when you come up to turrets, like heavy bolters are the main one. I saw an autocannon one, and there's a plasma gun. Good luck in getting to that one before it gets blown up. If you can do that, let me know. I'll buy you a beer because I couldn't do that. But you can, when you take the turret, control of the turret, you can then shoot it like you would in one fixed position, but when you're done, you can tear that turret off, and then you carry it the rest of the mission for a certain amount of time. Now that I've mentioned all the mechanics that I accidentally messed, let's go to the gun bunker and finally finish Chapter 1. In the next section, you head into the gun where you get your next weapon. It's called a Vengeance Launcher. In all honesty, I'm not fond of this weapon. It has some uses. Basically, it's a sticky grenade launcher. You launch grenades onto a target and then you detonate them at the same time. There are better weapons that come later that go in this slot, so I replace this weapon as soon as I can. I'm not impressed with this weapon. Shortly after making entry into the gun, the decision is made to destroy it in order to turn the tide of this battle and deny the enemy the powerful asset. The next section, which to an extent is an escort mission, but it's kind of fun. Once you make it to the armory inside the gun, you find melta charges also known as melta-bombs. You decide to take one of those melta-bombs and attach it to an artillery shell. Surprisingly, it is Corporal Leandros that makes this recommendation. Once the artillery shell is fired, it will cause a catalytic explosion inside the gun and destroying it. However, you have to make sure the gun shell gets there, so you have to follow the shell up to different levels and fight off the mobs of orcs each time. Overall, the section is quite simple, somewhat annoying. You can get overwhelmed, but nothing too difficult. Once you succeed, you escape the gun and it is destroyed and blows up behind you as you move on to the next part of the story. Okay, here's another quick mechanic that I missed. There's marksman mode, which is added to Fury. You get this upgrade as well. In quick terms, whenever you go into aim mode by pulling the left trigger on a Xbox controller, and I believe it is the L2 on a PlayStation controller, you basically go into an aim over the shoulder mode or over a scope, and it's in slow motion. You still regain health, you do more damage than you would normally fire. It's good. Now that the gun battery has been destroyed and the Liberation Fleet can make its approach, your squad can return to its original mission to secure the high valuable asset known as the Imperial Titan, leading into the next section where now you must fight to get aboard the Ram, basically a train that will take you to the manufactorium where the Titan is being secured. You fight it through a large mob of orcs to board the train and begin traversing. Unfortunately, the train is also under orc control, and they're using it for one heck of a joyride. You have to fight your way to the front, and then once a orc battering ram ship decides to come up behind you, which becomes your next boss fight. For this section, basically what I ended up doing is I seeked cover, allowing my shield to recharge, and then attacked the battering ram ship in the air. Throughout this section, no matter if you tear off the plasma cannon or you keep it on its tripod, you have unlimited ammo for this section, so keep that in mind. I tore it off so I can take cover as needed, wait for my shield to recharge, and then attack it. Later in the match, he will drop mobs of orcs that you can kill to regain some health. Otherwise, it's a pretty simple boss fight. Just be careful, take cover when you need it, and take advantage of your Halo-like energy shield. Go, go, go!
The Manufactorum still holds.
Some Imperial Guard units made it here after all.
They cannot hold for long. We must hurry.
What is that servo skull doing?
Trying to deliver a message. Must be damaged. The seal of the Inquisition. Interesting.
What is the Inquisition doing here?
We're about to find out.
This is Inquisitor Drogan. I need urgent assistance at Manufactorum Majakis. They're after the experimental device. The device is safe for the time being. I've drawn them off, but now I'm trapped. If I die, you must keep the device out of enemy hands, or he'll be unstoppable. I needed more time. I was nearly ready.
An experimental weapon.
We need to find the Inquisitor.
Once the servitor skull delivers the distress call of Inquisitor Drogon, it is Captain's decision to deviate once again from the mission of safeguarding the Titan and attempt a rescue mission of Inquisitor Drogon. Once again, you fight your way through a bunch of orcs. Mean, nasty orcs that want nothing more than to kill themselves a space marine. During that time frame, you drop a Titan plasma cannon on top of a large mob of orcs, eliminating a large portion of the problem and saving the Imperial Guard forces from being overwhelmed. You make your way to a lift, where you have to fight a large mob of orcs before you meet the Imperial Guard that are protecting the lift, and continue on your rescue mission. It is during this section you find the next melee upgrade, the Force Axe. This is my go-to melee weapon. I usually stick with this melee weapon for the majority of the game. There are certain times that I will take the Demon Hammer, but the Demon Hammer has its own restrictions that come with its powerful melee attacks, so usually I stick with this Force Axe for the majority of the rest of the game. Once you take the elevator lift down, the guardsmen protecting the lift brief you on the current situation, and you make your final steps towards Inquisitor Drogon after eliminating more orc mobs in your way. The Inquisitor will then explain to you what this weapon is, a power source created by pure energy of the warp. Now, I'm assuming the majority of the audience watching this report are Warhammer 40K fans. I'm going to give a quick lecture on what the warp is in 40K. Now, I would call myself a 40K nerd, if you didn't already guess. But there might be others who are more 40K nerd than me, and they might completely disagree with my explanation or want to go too much in detail. And might sound something around the lines of, well, the warp is technically this, that, it has demons, and it's technically a new layer of space and all this. I'm trying to be simplified here, so, neat. In 40K, the warp is basically an alternate dimension from real space, where demons and other dark creatures live. But the warp is crucial to the 40K universe. It is used for space travel. It is used for psychic abilities. Psychers tap into the warp to gain and use their gifts of power. However, it is very dangerous and very, very evil. The warp contains demons and other nightmares that, when released, can cause great damage to the world. However, the warp is a necessary evil for everything from space travel to, in this case, a pure energy source. Most science fiction universes have their own form of faster-than-light travel. Halo uses slip space, basically an alternate dimension to travel through. Star Trek uses warp speed. Star Wars uses hyperspace routes. Similar setup to slip space in Halo. And one of my favorite science fiction universes has one of the more unique ones that I enjoy, Battlestar Galactica. Now, I'm not going to go into this complete rant and explanation about their stuff, but Battlestar Galactica basically uses their FTL as like a leapfrog. They're at one point in space, and suddenly they're at a different point in space. FTL, a quick leap, but they can only do it in a short burst, and then they have to wait for a recharge. The point I'm getting at with this rant is, faster-than-light travel is necessary in any science fiction universe, and 40K's is the warp. However, it comes with a lot of disadvantages. It comes with evil. The warp is like the Force in Star Wars. However, there is no light side, and there is no dark side. It is pure dark, and it just depends on how much you tap into it, what kind of evil you can release into the universe. The next upgrade you stumble upon after a skirmish with a mob of orcs and their war boss watching over, you find a plasma pistol. It does more damage than the bolt pistol. It also still has unlimited ammo, but does overheat. And it comes in handy from time to time because it can do a good amount of damage. You can tap it quickly and take out medium level enemies, and certain enemies you can fire a full charge shot and it sticks to them and detonates like a sticky grenade in Halo. Pro tip for later. At this point, the orc psychics are introduced. They are called Weird Boys. Make sure you take them out first whenever it is possible, because they can cause more orcs to spawn in, as well as block your path of advancement, especially in the upcoming jetpack section. You use the sticky shot technique full charge on the big two-handed knobs that you see, the two-handed chainsword orcs, and what you're seeing now, the orcs with shields. Upon entering the generator room, you will see where the power source is stored in the middle. And shortly after the power source is revealed, the orc war boss teleports in with a bunch of his boys and attempts to impede your progress and steal the power source for himself. Once you activate the console, you will then be able to acquire the power source. Captain Titus grabs it in preparation to transport it. Even if it doesn't take off. Preparation for their Terminator
Sidonus,
survivors.
Leandros, respond.
Captain!
After you have acquired the power source and the cutscene ends, your teammates assume you're dead until you make radio contact. And then you traverse a little bit until you get to the next mechanic. And one of the best weapons in the game, the melt-a-gun. The melt-a-gun is like a shotgun, except it shoots liquid acid on your enemies. It is a really good weapon, especially at close range. Later in this part of the game, you acquire another upgrade, the Superior Fury. It's an upgraded version to the Fury you currently have. Quicker charge, longer lasting. Eventually you make it out of the sewer underground and rendezvous with your teammate to begin the next section. And shortly into the next section, you get the next upgrade, which happens to be the weapon that turns orcs into pink mist, the las cannon. The las cannon is a extremely good sniper rifle. However, the cooldown between shots is a bit long. You can usually take out an enemy in 1 to 2 shots. Definitely 1 shot if you get a headshot. The las cannon is, in my opinion, an upgraded version of the Stalker Bolter. Based on my playthrough, choose the las cannon over the Stalker Bolter. And based on my playthrough, even when you get an opportunity to switch between the Stalker and the las cannon, keep the las cannon and just watch your ammo. And you shouldn't run out of ammo at the wrong moment with your las cannon as long as you're conservative and you pick it up. Do you remember earlier in this review, I told you to be mindful of the Rocket Boys? Here is a prime example as to why I said that. It took me multiple tries to get through this section after I picked up the las cannon. And that's because the Rocket Boys kept unaliving the character. So remember what I said. Be mindful of the Rocket Boys and don't let them take you out, or it might take you multiple tries in one section. So after the last section of the game took me a few attempts to get past, the next section's pretty standard. You shoot some orcs, chop some orcs, and you move on to the next section as you continue to progress towards rendezvousing with Inquisitor Drogon. Just like I emphasized before, be mindful of the Rocket Boys, use your melt-a-gun, watch your ammo on your las cannon, and maybe you'll get through this section quicker than me. This one took a few attempts, and I might have gotten slightly tilted and aggravated, and insert swearing like a sailor here. Now picture doing that again, because you accidentally lost part 3. Yep, I had to redo a portion of the game again. So all of that dying, I ended up doing again. Because not only did I have difficulties, but I was extremely aggravated and tilted just slightly that I lost all that footage and had to redo it again. But luckily, through the great powers of editing, you will not have to experience the same ulcer-inducing pain that I had to go through. No, to you, blink and you'll miss it. Also, right now, you have experienced 2.5 hours of gameplay in 30 minutes. You have experienced 3 hours of gameplay in the time that it took back in the day for Domino's to deliver you a pizza, otherwise it's free! Forgive me for bragging and tooting my own horn a little bit. So after finally arriving at this cutscene a second time because of all that lost footage, Inquisitor Drogon tells you about what's called a Scourge weapon. Basically, a weapon that will target only Xenos, aka alien, and unalive them off the planet, leaving the humans unharmed. So once again, here we're off and deviating from our original plan. Wonder if we will ever actually get to the Titan. So now we're gonna reach the part I was talking about earlier when it came to the turrets during missed mechanics. So there's a particular plasma cannon that you're gonna see right there on a tripod as these Imperial Guardsmen are being destroyed and mutilated by orcs. Now I have tried multiple times to get that particular turret, but I can't run fast enough. It gets blown up before you get to it thanks to my favorite enemy, the Rocket Boys. So I'm serious. Anybody who watches this report and can give me video evidence of them successfully getting to that turret and tearing it off and using it to recab it on the Rocket Boys, let me know. Show me the video. I will buy you a beer. I will buy you a case. And if you happen to not be 21, I'll buy you a case of soda. You get what I'm saying? So Captain Titus decides at this point in the game, he is going to become the distraction for the next. But Captain Titus and his squad of Ultramarines with Inquisitor Drogon separate. Drogon and your squad go one way and Captain Titus goes the other way, where he picks up a jump pack and the strongest melee weapon in the game, the Demon Hammer. Now, in this section, it is mandatory you use the Demon Hammer. However, the disadvantage of the Demon Hammer is the only weapon you can use is your pistol and your bolter while you have the Demon Hammer. All other weapons are not available to you. This is also why, in later levels, you're going to see me purposely not pick up the Demon Hammer. But when you do have it, use it, especially when you have a jump pack. It is awesome feeling. It's fun. You feel like a beast, so enjoy it while you got it, because it, just like previously, there's only a certain amount of time you get with the jump pack before you lose it. Now remember the tip I said earlier about the weird. This is one of the sections that I specifically said it. I found it out originally by accident, purely by activating Fury and destroying a weird boy. But then when I had to play through this section again because I lost all my footage, I followed my own idea and knocked out the weird boys quick. By doing so, it opened the pathway to progression and I stopped getting swarmed. Just like the previous jump pack section, it's fast paced, you do a lot of melee attacks, a lot of unaliving orcs in a short period of time, you feel intense, and when it's over, you move on to the next section. Once you complete the jump pack section, you observe the Imperial Guard front line as they repel an invasion of orcs. You walk towards the lieutenant, and you take one of the Valkyries so that you can make it to Drogon's lab for the next section. And that is where we're going to conclude this part. At this time, I am currently at approximately 30 minutes of footage, and I have only done a third of the game. I was going to release this in one part, but because of how long this one video is, I'm going to release it in multiple parts. So as of this day, it is now September 8th, a day before Space Marine 2 to the entire world beyond their limited release for pre-orders and Ultimate and Platinum Edition. So a week from this date, I'll have part 2. A week from this date, I will have part 2. Thank you to anybody who's made it to this part of the video. If part 2 is released at the time you're watching this video, on the screen, part 2 will appear. Till next time.